A total of 61 long-range missions from San Severo, is that right? Italy in support of the bomber offensive of Southern Europe, including a shuttle run to Russia and 16 trips to the Ploesti oil fields in Romania. In the course of his combat tour, he destroyed 11 enemy fighters in the air, and although he led his squadron into combat 7 times and twice led the entire group of 3 squadrons, he was still only 21 years old when he completed his tour and returned to the States. He's decorated with the Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross with 1 Oak Leaf Cluster, the Air Medal with 17 Oak Leaf Clusters, and the Presidential Unit Citation with 1 Oak Leaf Cluster. After various assignments in the atomic energy and space programs, he retired from the Air Force in '66. It's my pleasure to introduce Bob Goebel.
Yeah. Oh.
Thank you. The mission that I'd like to share with you this afternoon was in some ways quite peculiar, at least to me it seemed so, and it was flown in August, 18th of August, next week is the anniversary, 18th of August 1944. And the repercussions of this mission are continuing even to this day, and by the time I finish you'll understand why. But before I go into the details of the mission itself, I'd like to kind of give you a feel for the environment that existed at the time. I was stationed in Italy, a little town of San Severo, just north of Foggia. The group had been flying all through Africa and Sicily on tactical missions, flying Spit 8s and 9s, well, Spit 5s first and then Spit 8s and 9s. It was one of 2 American Spitfire groups sent by the train there. But they were told that they were losing the Spits, we're getting P-51Bs, and we're going over to the eastern side of Italy, to the Foggia side of Italy, to participate in strategic bombing in Central Europe, escorting D-17s and B-24s. And as I said, at the time we had P-51Bs. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, looking back 50 years, it's apparent, we thought the 51, and it was the latest, hottest thing going at the time, but from the perspective of 50 years, it's apparent that it was a closer cousin to the Spad and the Camel and the Newport than it is to the F-22. It's true it had all metal skin, more powerful engine, but we had no G-suits. Navigational equipment consisted of a compass and a clock, which isn't a hell of a lot. There's no pressurization. When the altimeter said 27,000 feet, you had 27,000 feet inside the cockpit too, which caused, I think, some additional fatigue after hours and hours flying on 100% oxygen. Our targets were generally the southern part of Europe, from Munich, Budapest, Vienna, and Wiener Neustadt was always a hotly defended target because there was an ME-109 assembly plant at Wiener Neustadt. And of course, the oil fields of Ploesti was also a favorite target, as Hatch said. We went there many times. Well, about the first part of August, the squadron commander came to me and he said, "Hey, I think there's still a lot of..." Now, we noticed the weakening of the German fighting force, and he said, I still think there's a lot of fighters out there, but they're loitering in the target area, waiting for uncovered bombers or whatever. And I've gotten permission, I and Tommy Mullen, have gotten permission to put up 4 extra aircraft. Now, typically, we would put up 4 flights of 4, 16 aircraft plus spares, in the typical figure 4 formation of 4 flights, and then 4 flights in the squadron would look like that as well. And he said, I've got permission to put up 4 extra aircraft that would have no close escort responsibility, but we could roam around the target area, fitting into whatever mischief we could come up. And I said, well, count me in. So he was going to lead the flight, and I was going to fly number 3. We took 2 new guys for our wingman. So we took off with the regular squadron and rendezvoused with the bombers. typically, when we went to Ploesti, we would rendezvous around the Danube River or Crayola, something in that area. And then, but when we got into the target area proper, I thought I spotted some little fast-moving dots out to the east. I called them out, and Tommy made a turn, and I lost them visually, and we stooged around for a while. Finally, he said, "Well, I'm going back to target area. We cut out here." So we turned, and we're heading back now westward toward Ploesti, Bucharest area. We were on the Russian side of Ploesti at the time. And I was flying step down on the left side, and I kind of casually looked back, and my blood ran cold. There's looked like 16, well, 14, 16 ME-119s up there, and they were close. Now, exactly how they got that close, without either of us seeing each other, there must have been some obscuration of visibility. And that one too. And there wasn't. Well, after about 2/10 of a second or something, I called a break, and I thought I could see out of the corner of my eye that 8 of them took off away from us. I don't know whether they're new guys that they were taken out of the fight or what, but 8 of them bounced us out. We broke into them, and then the fight was on. You know, I got a dry mouth already. We had to start shooting. Yeah. Well, the first 10 seconds are a blur anyway. Going to full throttle, hop forward, makes everything forward. I spotted 119 in front of me, or more or less in front of me, and I took off after him and closed very rapidly on him. Closed to about 200 yards, I would guess, and got strikes with the first burst. And I loaded him up pretty good, and his canopy came off, and he came out. As soon as his chute blossomed, I forgot about him. Looked around, I couldn't see my wingman anywhere, but I did look down about 11 o'clock, saw another 109. He was diving pretty fast, but I think I was in more emergency boost, and I was diving too, so I was really moving, and I drew up on it very, very quickly. By that time, I think he was down to perhaps 8,000 feet or so, and I'd come down from like 18 or 19 after disposing of his first one. So I was really moving, and I closed very rapidly. Again, got strikes along the wing root and fuselage, and I saw his canopy come off, and he came hurtling out right behind it. And I might have been a little slow getting off the trigger. I don't know. And anyway, even after you let up on the trigger, as you well know, you have some rounds in transit, and perhaps a second later are still going out there. At any rate, I cocked it up on the wing to watch him, and watched him fall and tumble, and his chute never opened, and he fell to his death in a plowed field there in Romania. And I was shocked, I think. I'd never seen anything like that before, you know. I suppose in your own mind you continue with this fiction that you're attacking an airplane, and here was the man. I saw the man right there. But within a second or two, I realized that I better get my head back in the cockpit, or I was going to wind up alongside of him, and I didn't care for that prospect. So I cleaned up the airplane, throttled back, looked around. No wingman, no Tommy Holland, no nothing. And the prospect wasn't particularly appealing to me. I was 600 miles from home, all alone. That's kind of lonesome feeling sitting out there in the middle of Romania. But I tried to call anybody on the air. Transmitted a line, no response. So I was trying to decide whether to stay down, because I had to recross the target area, you see, in order to get home. I'm out east of Ploesti. Trying to decide whether to stay down and try to speed back across the target area, or climb up. And because I had very much confidence in the Mustang in its ability to dive. It accelerated very fast in the dive, and several times previous to this, I discontinued the fight merely by diving away at full throttle, and I outliked the FW-190, two FW-190s that were chasing me, and the 109. So I felt very confident if I could get up to 20,000 feet, I could take care of myself, in spite of, you know, fairly large numbers if I were attacked. Anyway, I decided to climb back up again. So I set my climb throttle and dropped, and I was turning about 45 degrees every 15 to 20 seconds, because I knew that's a very blind, as everybody here knows. I suppose I climbed back up to about, I don't know, 10,000 feet, and bang, as airplane shook, and I immediately broke without even looking. It broke hard as I can. 4 or 5 Gs briefing it in, and then I looked, and sure enough, there were 2 109s coming hard. Now, where they came from, I still don't know, but there they were. And so we mixed it up, but they didn't seem very aggressive, and I think they were low on fuel. Probably had the road dilemma, which was a little red light that came on, and then they had 10 minutes to get it on the ground after the light came on. And they did break off the engagement that had to be run around and around a few times. Assuming, of course, that I'd be more than happy to do the same. And certainly the logic was all on their side. 600 miles from home, almost out of very marginal on fuel, unknown ammunition state, but I knew that I didn't have a hell of a lot left. But, you know, sagacity is not easily found in 21-year-old fighter pilots. I tore ass out. They gone out on the deck and they were flying line abreast, about 300 yards apart, I suppose. And I started gaining. I chose the left one and started gaining on him. And as I was getting perhaps 500 or 600 yards, just still out of range, but imminently about to open fire, when he started to turn away from his friend. It didn't take Einstein to realize that I was being put in the middle of that sandwich. So I rolled out, and he rolled out. Everybody rolled out. So now I don't know what the hell to do. I'm not real sure I know how to let go of these 2 people. But I thought, well, I'll try it again. And if I don't get a shot, then I'm going to have to figure out how to break this off big time. So I started moving in again on the one on the left, and his wingman or element leader, whichever, started turning, but he started turning too steeply and too fast, and actually went over the top of me. And I knew he could never reverse his turn in time to catch up. So I closed on my man. I got some scattered hits because I was running out of ammunition by now. I was seeing tracers. Now, let me digress a minute. We had no rounds counter, so the armors would put a tracer in about every 5th round. And so when you saw tracers, you know you're running out of ammunition. You're pretty low on running out of ammunition. And I was seeing tracers, and I knew I didn't have much more chance. But he did run into a small hillock there. So now I'm looking out for his buddy, and thankfully he was gone, because I was out of ammunition now. So I decided to climb back up again. This time I was not bound to anybody, and I did get up to 20,000 feet. But that was a long flight. That was a long flight. Drenched with sweat, keyed up, nervous, a little nauseated from the emotion and trying to trim that throttle, watch those gauges. Well, you looked at the gauges every 10 seconds. They couldn't possibly move, but just still. Well, I did get it back, and I think I was running on fumes by the time I spiked it down on the PSP runway there. Then I pulled in my parking area, got shot, and crawled out, and told the crew chief what happened. We looked at that airplane from the tip of the spinner to the end of the tail, and and there was not a damn mark on it. And I'm standing there scratching my head. I said, geez, I would have sworn I got hit when those two slipped up on me. Something caused that airplane to shake. And we looked, and there was not a mark on it. And then the crew chief said, well, he said, I think what happened is your engine detonated. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with detonation. When the engine gets hot, on the compression stroke, a cylinder will auto-detonate, will go off in the head of the spark, and you kind of get kicked back down again, I suppose, or a slowing of the piston. Anyway, and I said, well, I don't have any better explanation than you got, but boy, if that's what it was, it sure was a providential, because another 10 seconds and I would have been dog meat for those two guys behind me. So on that day, at least, I think I had Robert L. Scott's co-pilot with me looking after me. Well, in the press of every day, flying and getting ready for the next day, got to go again the next day, I kind of forgot about this, and I forgot about the pilot whom I'd seen fall to his death in a plowed field there. And then about 50 years later, well, yeah, almost 50 years later, I started writing this book, and I was doing some thinking about those old days, and I guess I'd always wondered something about it. Now, if you ask me where this compulsion to know something about this pilot who would shoot didn't open, I'm not sure I could give you an answer. I'm sure it had something to do with the fact that all the other kills were an airplane that blew up, but this was a man that I saw die. Whatever the reason, I started looking into doing some research to see if I could find out who he was. You know, with Unity flew it and all. And I didn't have much luck, and I was about to give up when an author from Lake Jackson, Texas here suggested I call or write to Eric Mombeek, a Belgian historian who specialized in Lake. So I did. I told him the date, 18th of August, and the circumstances and the location. And he wrote me back about 2 weeks later, and he said, well, it could only be two JGs, JG-77 or JG-53. And he said JG-77 was not in action on the 18th of August, so it had to have been in JG-53. And furthermore, a new set of books, 3 volumes, History of JG-53, has just come out by Dr. Preen from Hamburg. And when I looked in the tables in the back there was indeed a pilot on the 18th of August who fell to his death when his chute didn't open, and it was within 10 miles of where I told him it was. I said it was 40 miles east of Bucharest, and it was about 30 miles east of Bucharest. So he said, I'm sure that's your man, and I was reasonably sure too. His name was Herbert Franke, and he flew with the first group of JG-53, Migas, Ace of Spades wing. And so I managed to find the book that he was talking about, the 3rd volume of this Geschichte des Migas. And so I learned a little bit more about Herbert Franke. He first appears in Russia in 1942. And it was a very terse reference. He crashed and the airplane was totally destroyed. And then he shows up again. He was a passenger in an HE-111, Adolf Galan's HE-111, as a matter of fact. They were ferrying some pilots. And he ran off the runway and ran out into the Tyrrhenian Sea. And so it put Herbert Franke back in the hospital for 2 months. When he got out of the hospital, the group had moved up to Maniago in northern Italy, and he shot down a P-38 and was himself shot down by a P-38 near Venice. And then he moved to Ploesti after he got out of the hospital in May, and flew from Ploesti. Well, as I'm leafing through this book, I come upon a reference by the author to the state of morale of the JG-53, and it said, as an example, here is a letter written by Herbert Franke to his friend Ernst Pausinger, who was in the hospital in Vienna. Now, Pausinger had been shot down in June, and by a B-24 gunner and had glass in his eye and subsequently lost the eye. But the letter that he cited in his book, that Herbert Franke had written on the 2nd of August to his friend Ernst Pausinger is very short, and if you can put up with my translation of the German, which is not very good, it's only 3 paragraphs long. I think it's a rather poignant letter, and well, you can choose for yourself. I'd like to read it to you. He says, "Dear Ernst, I received your letter from Vienna today with thanks. Please excuse me for first first answering it today. Things are again rather mad. Deadly dogfights with large numbers of greatly superior Mustangs. We can scarcely get close to the bombers. Captain Bauer has fallen, and Unteroffizier Semper was shot while hanging his parachute. Many that you don't even know have not returned. I wouldn't like to mention numbers, or else it would look very bad to you. Only now and then is one of the Tommies still shot down. At the present time, only Kornatz, Berggraf, and myself, of the people you know, are still flying in the Staffel. But little friend, how can one be upset if he has to lie in bed? Sleep away until you are completely rested. I can sleep day and night. And with your eye," he's referring to the wound in his eye, "and with your eye it will heal good. I hold both my thumbs," which is an idiom for I'm pulling for you. The only happy news, Unteroffizier Janetz was promoted to Feldwebel, little news. That, however, is the only good news. We have just become a young pile. Well, he was to live only 16 days after he wrote that letter, because that's when we met, and I killed him. Well, I tried various other sources of information to find something, and finally just about given up. And one day I was leafing through the Jägerblatt. This isn't the copy, but it was like this. It's a periodical that the German Fighter Pilots Association puts out, and a friend of mine gets it, and he saved it and gave it to me, gives it to me so I can look at the pictures, because I can't decipher German. And 2 summers ago, I was leafing through this and came upon a picture of 2 men, and I'm reading the caption underneath it. And it's Edu Neumann, who was the head of the German fighter forces in Bucharest, and Ernst Pausinger, the recipient of the letter that my victim had written to. And I'm thinking, there can't be 2 Ernst Pausingers? Surely not. I called a friend of mine who was an ex-Luftwaffe pilot. I said, "Hey, is there a directory of pilots in the Gemeinschaft that I could look up the guy's address?" And he said, "No, but who are you looking for?" I said, "Ernst Pausinger." So he called me back a day or 2 later with his address. He lived down in Bavaria in a little town of Herrengersdorf. So I wrote to him, it's pretty tough to say I killed your friend, but I didn't try to pull any punches. I told him that I had this information and wanted to know if he had anything in addition. Tell me about Ernst, maybe have a picture or something. And I didn't hear anything for, I suppose, a month, and I figured, well, he didn't want to have anything to do with me, which was all right. But then I got a letter from him. He said, well, he'd been on holiday in Italy, and as soon as he got back, he'd seen my letter and was happy to receive it. He told me a bunch of information that I already had from the history of GT-53. But he said, the last time I saw Herbert, I was in the hospital in Bucharest before they shipped me back to Vienna, and he came to visit me. And that's the last time I saw Herbert. In fact, he said, I didn't even know that Herbert was killed until I rejoined the group the following October. When I found out. Anyway, we started corresponding, and I've got to, as well as you can know somebody from corresponding, I got to know him fairly well. And in 1994, the Gemeinschaft invited the American fighter races to meet with them in Geisenheim, Germany. And I went over, and I met Ernst for the first time. And although he speaks no English and I don't speak any German, we managed. He runs a small brewery in Herrengersdorf. So he brought some beer along and a stein for me. And while the brewery's only been in his family for 200 years, it's been in continuous production since 1131.
Yeah.
It's the second oldest brewery in Germany. So he brought this stein and a couple bottles of beer, and so we got arms around each other's shoulders, and we're drinking this beer together. And I was thinking, if someone had told me 1944 that in my lifetime, never mind it's 50 years, that one day I'd be drinking beer with these people that were trying to kill me and I was trying to kill them, I would have thought they were playing with a short deck. But times change and people's attitudes change, and thank goodness, I suppose. I think one of the German pilots summed it up best when he said, he said something to his German friends, and he turned to me and said in English, he said, referring to World War II, he said, those were the days when we were all young and beautiful. Now we are really beautiful. I imagine a lot of you have questions. I'm not sure that I can hear them, but if you'll shout, somebody tell me how much time we've got or whether I'm running